New 72 Radio, the voice, views, and visions of the collective.
Hello, this is Jeremy J.R. White here. This is Tales of the Secret Isle. This morning I'm going to speak briefly about a character called Taliesin, who was a bard who existed somewhere between the years of 534 and 599. He was a chief bard in the courts of at least 3 kings of Britain and was associated with the Book of Taliesin, a text from the 10th century containing his poems. The life of Taliesin was mythologized in the mid-16th century by Ellis Griffith, whose account drew from Celtic folklore and existing oral tradition. According to the mythologized version, the bard began life as a character called Gwion Bach, a servant boy on the shores of Bala Lake, where the giant Tegid Fowl and his witch wife Cerwedin lived. Tegid and Cerwedin also had a beautiful daughter, Creidri, and a son, Morfran, who is so ugly and so stupid no magic could cure him. Cerwedin began a potion to brew to make her son handsome and wise, and Gwion Bach is given a job of stirring the cauldron over the fire. He must stir it for a year and a day for its purpose and its magic to be imbued into the great potion. A blind man, Morda, is also employed to tend the fire beneath. According to the legend, the first 3 drops of this liquid give wisdom. The rest are poisonous. And as Gwion goes about his work, stirring the great cauldron, gently putting the motion and energy in the concoction, 3 drops fall onto his thumb. He instinctively, as the liquid begins to burn his skin, puts his thumb in his mouth to stop the burning, instantly gaining great wisdom and knowledge. Frightened of Cerwedin's reaction, Gwydion flees the location. The potion has given him great abilities, one of these abilities being to shapeshift, and he turns himself into a rabbit. But Cerwedin finds what the boy has done, and she, being a witch, turns herself into a hound to chase after him. Gwion assumes the shape of a fish and dives into the river. Cerwedin becomes an otter and chases after him over the bank and scurrying through the water. Gwion turns himself into a bird and flies up high into the sky. The witch then becomes a hawk and continues her chase constantly. Finally, Gwydion becomes a single grain of corn and hides himself in a bowl with a load of other ears of wheat and corn. Cerwedin then assumes the form of a great hen and eats everyone, him included. After Cerwedin resumes her original shape, she finds a strange sensation in her stomach, and she realizes she is pregnant. She instinctively knows that it is Gwion growing inside her. After the birth, she had plans to kill him, but the child is so beautiful, she is unable to. Instead, she casts him into the ocean in a great leather bag she has made for herself, and lets the will of the sea decide his fate. The baby boy is discovered by Elfin, son of Gwyddno Garahir, and the unluckiest prince in Wales. Elfin is given a large estate in his father's kingdom in mid-Wales to rule over. But almost immediately the sea breaks through the defensive dams and the estate is lost to the sea. Elfin is recorded as being the most unluckiest prince in all of Wales. Gwyddno presents his son with the annual salmon catch at the Dyfi River for compensation, but when the river keeper draws in his nets, There is no single fish in the nets at all, except a large leather bag. Inside the bag is the reborn Gwion Bach. Where Elfin sets eyes upon him, he is so shocked by the whiteness of the boy's brow, he cries out, Taliesin, meaning how radiant is his brow. As he rides home with the boy on his horse, the child begins first to speak, then to recite poetry. The poem he recites tells Elfin that Taliesin has been sent to guide him, that he's not only a great poet but also a prophet, and that by using his gifts all Elfin's enemies will be defeated. Elfin's luck changes thereafter, and he prospers in all he does. Taliesin becomes the most famous bard in Britain, foretelling the death of the evil King Malgwyn, Gwynedd, at the hands of the Yellow Beast. Though his poetry he inspires the Celtic warriors of Britain in their struggle against the Saxon invaders. Towards the end of his life, Taliesin makes a famous prophecy about the fate of the British, which has had tremendous significance in contemporary Wales. And this is the last quote of this excerpt. Thy Lord they shall praise, thy language they shall keep, but their land they will lose, all except Wales. So that's just a brief description of Taliesin, which I will use again in another stories where I'll tell you more. Now from this point, I'm going to go and look on to some of the Norse stories. This one's called The Doom of the Volsungs. It's the Teutonic version. And it's one of the easiest ones to read. So the story starts. Ere the sons of Ivaldi warred against the gods, they loved 3 swan maidens, whose songs in summer were sweet to hear. One morning the snow-white birds flew towards the lake of Wolfdales. The brothers followed them, and there they beheld sitting on the shore 3 beauteous Valkyries, who were singing and spinning flax. Beside them lay their swan coverings, and these brothers captured these maidens. Then they had made the swan maids into their power, and they took them as their brides. Egil Olvandan, the oldest, had Oberon. Slagfinguki had swan white, and Thrazy Volund had all white. For 7 years they all lived happily together, but in the 8th year the swan maids were seized with longing, and in the 9th they flew away in search of conflicts. Nor did they ever again return. In vain did Orvel Elgil make swift pursuit on his skis, and in vain did Slagfinguki search for his lost bride. But Thracy Volund remained behind. And when the winter war began to be waged, he retired into the deep mountain recess, where he concealed his treasure, which he cursed with spells. Then did Thracy Volund erect a smithy, where he forged a magic sword of victory, so that he might wreak vengeance upon the gods and become chief ruler in Asgard. A wondrous serpent ring did he also fashion. It was given power to multiply without end. And when Mimir came suddenly upon the cunning artificer and bound him, he found within the smithy a chain of 700 rings, which could fetter the wind. In ancient England, minstrels were wont to sing of Angles and Saxons and of Volund, the wonder smith, whom they called Wayland. He was the prince of the fairies. In other lands, in other tongues, he was the Lay of Volund, sung also. Mimir was named Nithud, and Nithud called King of Sweden. Now King Nithud desired greatly to possess the treasures of Wayland, so he sent mounted warriors to Wolfdale to take the elf prince captive. In bright moonlight the men rode forth clad in shining armour. When they reached Wayland's hall, they entered it boldly, for the smith, who was a skilled archer, was hunting afar. They beheld hanging on the wall a chain of 700 rings. They took it down, and 1 ring they kept. Then the men concealed themselves. In time, Wayland returned from the chase. Keen-eyed was he indeed, for he at once seized the rings and sat down on the bearskin to count them. He found that one was missing, and he deemed fondly that his fairy wife had returned, but for her he had forged the ring. Musing thus a long time, he fell fast asleep. In sorrow he awoke. His hands were chained and his feet were fettered. Then his captors bore him away, and they put him on an island to forge weapons and ornaments for the king. The heart of Wayland was filled with wrath. On Neithard's belt, he cried, I behold the sword which I fashioned with my skill. I have lost forever my shining blade. Bodvild the queen hath now the ring for my fairy bride, that I shall never be appeased. In his secret heart Wayland vowed to be avenged. He took no rest. He sat not by day or slept by night. He kept striking with his hammer. One day 2 young sons of the king entered the smithy. He slew them both, and of their skulls made drinking cups, which he sent unto the king. Then unto him came Bodvild the queen, and she loved him because that she wore the magic ring, which was supposed to be for his swan bride. So by the wonder of the smith, she was completely beguiled. Wayland seemed not to work until he had fashioned himself eagle's pinions. Then he flew away, leaving the queen to grieve bitterly for him because of the spell that was upon her, while Neithard lamented for his dead sons. When Thracy Volund perished in Asgard, whither he had flown, and the sons of Ivaldi passed also, the curse remained upon the treasure, which was then guarded by a dwarf, or some say tell, by a fiery dragon. And after days the curse fell upon each man who became possessed of the doomed hoard of the son of Ivald. And ever did the rings continue to multiply, and the chain grow strong, ring follow ring, and liking one to the other, and each one like to the first that was forged by this wonder smith. The rings came down the age, and the chain extended from land to land. So grew also, link by link, the wondrous story chain of Ivaldi's sons, and of the swan maidens whom they loved and lost. Their fame can never not, their sorrows, nor can their doom of the treasure curse pass away, while the ring will follow ring, and the chain grows on. Old is the ring tale of the Volsung's doom. By Icelandic skalds it was sung on harp music in other days, and warriors loved to hear it on the feasting hall as they drank their mead, while the log fire reddened their faces by the night wind bellowed through the gloom. For it was told that there was once a dwarf king named Riedmar, who possessed such treasure. This treasure that was doomed. He had 3 sons and 3 daughters. The first son was named Fafnir, the second Otter, and the third Regin. Fafnir had great strength and was fierce, as he was surly. He claimed the possessions of others for himself. Otter was wont to fish in otter guise and caught salmon in the river, which he laid out on the bank. Regin had neither the might of Fafnir nor the cunning of Otter, but he was a skilled hands, and he became a wondersmith who shaped weapons of iron and ornaments of silver and gold. One day Odin, Hona, and Loki journeyed together, and it chanced that they drew nigh to the dwelling of Riedmar. On the riverbank they saw an otter. He had devoured a salmon and lay fast asleep. Loki, who was ever working evil, flung a really sharp stone which made smote the dwarf's son and killed him dead. And when he was done that, he took off his skin. Then the gods went towards the dwelling of Riedmar and entered it. Wroth indeed was the dwarf when he beheld the otter's skin, and he seized the gods and demanded ransom. He demanded Weirgeld, the death price. So Loki had to go forth alone to obtain sufficient gold, while Odin and Hona stayed as captives as a guarantee of the return. Now Loki knew that the great treasure hoard lay hidden in the dark mountain cavern. It was guarded by a dwarf named Andvari, who had taken the guise of a pike and ever concealed himself in a deep pool below the waterfall. Loki resolved to possess the gold so that the gods might be set free. So he went to Ran, the sea goddess, and when he had told her of the plight of the gods, he borrowed her wondrous net. Then he hastened to the pool below the waterfall and fished up Andvari, the pike. "What a fish art thou," he said. "Thou dost lack cunning to be thus taken unawares. Of thee I demand a life ransom, a weird geld for your life. I demand the water gold." The pike answered, "My name is Andvari, and my sire is Odin. By a Norn of evil fortune was I doomed to pass my days in cold waters." But Andvari could deceive not Loki, and was forced to pay the life ransom, unwilling as he might be. So changing his shape, he went to the mountain cavern to yield up the treasure of which he was guardian. In vain Andvari sought to keep back a single gold ring, which he had the power to multiply, but Loki demanding it with the rest. Then was the dwarf moved to great anger. "My treasure is accursed," he cried. "It shall bring death of 2 brothers and cause strife amongst 8 kings. No man shall ever be made glad by this gold." Now Hreidmar had demanded for the gods that he should receive a ransom for his son's death, as much gold as would cover the otter's skin. Loki laid upon the skin all the treasure he had obtained, save the ring, which he sought to keep for himself. But Hreidmar perceived that there was a single whisker hair of the otter stood bare, and he demanded that it should be covered. Unwillingly did Loki lay the ring upon it. Then were the gods ransomed and set free. Loki was angry as the dwarf had been, because he had perforce part of the magic ring. And ere he went his way, he spoke fiercely of Hreidmar, saying, "Thou hast received gold enough now, and my head is safe. But thou shalt never prosper, nor shall thy sons prosper after thee. Take thou with thee gold, the curse that follows it." Then Fafnir arose and demanded the entire treasure for himself. He fought with his sire, to whom he gave the death wound. Ere he died, Hreidmar besought his daughters to avenge him, but one who was named Linghid said that a sister could slay not her brother, whereat her sire foretold that she would have a daughter, whose son would be his strong avenger. Fafnir drave forth his sisters and his brother Regin, and possessed himself all the treasure. Heavily indeed did the curse fall upon him, and there was never again any joy in his heart. He went unto a lonely place, which was called Glittering Heath, to be guardian of all his ill-gotten gold. And he brooded over it there with anger and suspicion, until he became a wingless dragon, which was feared and hated by all men. Okay, thanks for listening to the first part of that. Next time I'll put in another Celtic tale, telling me a bit more about Taliesin, and we'll go on to the next stage of the doom of the Volsungs. Once again, thanks for listening to Tales of the Secret Isle, and tune in again next time. Bye-bye.